I'm Anna Grzmabuse. I'm the director of the Weiser Center for Europe and Eurasia. And we'll have 5 fantastic presentations today by students who received the summer research and internship scholarships from the Weiser Center, the Center for European Studies, and the Center for Russian, East European, and Eurasian Studies. Before we start, though, I'd like to talk briefly about what the various possibilities for grants are. We have a variety of summer grants for research and internships in Europe and Eurasia. These are run by CREASE, by CES, and by the Weiser Center. I won't necessarily go through all of them right now, but I would like to call your attention to the fact that they exist. Some of them are bound to countries like Poland or Ukraine. Others are much more broader and just basically involve the entire Eurasian continent. For undergraduate students only, we also have 2 other sources of funding: the Kabcenell New Europe grants, which are basically for the countries that are part of the new EU or are planning on joining, and the Albanian Community Summer Fellowships, which were just established and are for the study of Albania and its region. There's one application for all grants. I would ask you to please tell your undergraduates and your friends about these. There's one grant application, there's one deadline, and current students, except those graduating in the winter terms, are all encouraged to apply. We also have the Jean Monnet Graduate Fellowships. These are for graduate students only. These are summer grants of $5,000 to work on issues of European integration, very broadly understood. And they have a different deadline, which is coming up on December 1st. There's basically also FLAS funding for language and area studies. We are still able to give those out despite the federal government's recent cutbacks. And more information, all of this can be found at the FLAS website. And these 2 have a deadline of March 15th. And basically, if you want any information on any of these grants at all, I would urge you to please look at the WCEE funding information website and to contact Julie Burnett, who's right here, who is a fount of information on all of these grants and on others as well. And now we'll move to our presentations. The first of these is Benjamin Pearson, who has a PhD in communication studies. We'll then hear from Benjamin Newman, a BA in German and history, Mark Kluk, who's an MD in the MD Public Health Policy program, Marisa Xheka, who is a BA in history and political science, and Polina Fradkin, who is a BA in international studies and in Russian. So first, Benjamin Pearson.
Hi. So I have the pleasure of talking about the research from 2 different Center for European Studies awards. First, over the summer, a couple years ago, I got the Summer Research Award and did some interviews in Brussels with some people who run aid programs that the European Union gives to audiovisual industries, primarily in the developing world. So there are 3 of these programs. In that research from the summer grant, I focused on what the aims of these programs are. And then over the summer, more recently, I had the Jean Monnet Fellowship to focus on the kind of historical and theoretical situations that made these programs possible. So I'll talk primarily about the Monnet research, but if you have questions about the aims of the programs, you can ask me afterwards. And also, sorry for my voice, I kind of have a flu, and I'm not feeling very good at all, so I'm trying. So as you can see, there are 3 of these programs, Euromed Audiovisual and ACP Films. They both focus on non-EU countries, and they're framed as development assistance. Euromed Audiovisual is the first program, and that works primarily in Arabic countries. They call them South Mediterranean. So there's 10 countries, and it's about 11 million euros. It covers training and distribution and some legal advice, but not production for audiovisual productions. ACP Films is the larger of the programs, and this one is focused on Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. It, unlike the Euromed Audiovisual program, does cover production of film and TV shows. And it also gets its funding from the European Development Fund, so that's Europe's official development assistance fund. The projects for ACP Films are chosen by this panel of anonymous experts made up of people from the audiovisual industry in Europe and in the countries that the program operates in. So here's a map of where ACP Films operates. You can see it's primarily Africa. And here's where Euromed Audiovisual operates. It's a really bad map, I'm sorry. But the tan countries on the bottom that aren't Turkey are where this operates. So 2 examples of what these programs fund generally before I move on to talking about the research for the Monnet Fellowship. This film, Viva Riva, was funded by ACP Films. It received about $500,000 from the program, €500,000, sorry. And it was the first film to be produced in DR Congo in 25 years, which was a big deal. And it was released in a bunch of countries across Africa simultaneously, which was also not a very common occurrence. And it was also distributed in the US and Europe and won a bunch of awards. It's kind of a crime thriller set in Kinshasa. It's very noirish. There's a plot involving stolen gasoline. That's a good movie. And another example of what these programs fund is training. So this training program is called L'Afrique en série. I don't speak French, so I'm really sorry about my pronunciation. This training program involves 12 courses run by European audiovisual professionals, primarily French people. And they are, each one is focused on a different aspect of TV production. So their courses taught to audiovisual professionals in, you can see Ghana, Cameroon, Niger, and Burkina Faso. And the aim, this is taken directly from their website. I think the aim is really interesting here. It's to make African TV meet global TV aesthetic standards. So the people who run this program say it's a really interesting time for African TV. It's a growing industry, but it doesn't quite look good. So they want to help TV there meet this idea of a global aesthetic. And they frame it as a development issue, saying that if they can do that, they can increase circulation of these TV shows abroad. Okay. So now I'm moving on to what I did over the summer for the Monnet Fellowship. I focused on what kind of set the stage for these programs to exist. As you saw from the timeline, they started around 2000 with Euromed Audiovisual and then ACP Films in 2009. So I was wondering what conditions made it so that assistance to audiovisual industries could be considered development assistance. And what I found were 3 main factors. The first is how development discourse and practice has changed since its beginnings after World War II. The second was Europe's history of cross-border exchange of culture, especially in an institutionalized fashion. And the third was the influence of global organizations, basically UNESCO. So after World War II was basically when the idea of international development as we know it now started. Arturo Escobar talks about what he calls the discovery of poverty, where for the first time, Europeans started thinking about the world as divided into them and the U.S. and then poor countries. So 3/4 of the world was defined as poor according to the quantitative measures that the Bretton Woods institutions, the World Bank, the UN, and UNESCO set up. And poverty was seen not just as an economic problem, but as a social problem that required technical expertise. So the global south was seen as kind of this homogeneous mass of undeveloped countries that their problems could only be solved by Western models of society. The two main camps of this development thinking were modernization theory and dependency theory. So modernization theory, Rostow was the big author for this, and he thought of development as occurring independently within discrete nation states. He didn't really think of any kind of interconnected global economy, and he saw it as following a linear model. This was opposed by dependency theory, which saw the global economy as interconnected and poor countries basically being exploited by richer countries. So it was within this discourse that people really started to think about media in development and what it could do. Generally, no matter what development discourse people embrace, media is seen as useful. It does something, but it's not something in itself. So media development is something you hear a lot about. That's basically establishing independent news, educational media to teach people about health. Information and communication technologies for development is a big thing right now. All of these use media for development aims. But recent scholarship in development has focused more on useless media and uselessness in general. So there's this idea in information and communication technologies for development called ludic design. That's the idea of creating playful projects that don't really have any set purpose, but set the stage for engagement and activity. A really great article about this non-productive media is Lawrence Lang's Access Beyond Developmentalism. And in this, Lang talks about the kind of intellectual divide of labor globally. Instead of thinking of it in purely economic terms, thinking of who has the luxury to engage in intellectual activity for work and who doesn't. So there's been this larger shift in development away from looking just at economic indicators to looking at things related to quality of life and pleasure. So within this discourse, which happened in about the 90s, it makes sense that entertainment media could be seen as an aspect of development. So the second aspect that I identified, European cultural exchange. So Europe has a history of cultural exchange through institutions. At first, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, this started as a way to shore up national identity and engage with diasporic communities. And it was competitive. But post-World War II, this changed, and it was more of a way to promote cross-cultural understanding and European unity. So in 1954, the first kind of institutionalization of cultural exchange across Europe was this Council of Europe's European Cultural Convention, which kind of codifies how countries should interact with each other for these exchanges. And today, I argue in my paper that these external exchanges of culture that countries within Europe have a long history of doing that you can think about those now as Europe's internal cultural policy at the EU level. So like Germany having a cultural exchange program with France. From the national perspective, that's external cultural policy, but from the EU perspective, that's internal cultural policy. And I argue that basically these EU audiovisual aid programs are an expansion of that logic globally. And I also argue that these are different from state audiovisual aid programs because those grew out of kind of colonial legacies and served more nationalistic aims. Okay, the final thing that I talk about in my paper is the influence of basically UNESCO. One of the more interesting discoveries I made while doing the research for this paper was that in 1974, UNESCO started something called the International Fund for the Promotion of Culture, which is really similar to these EU programs that I was investigating. So this dates back a lot further than I had originally thought. The funding mechanisms and the idea of development that this International Fund for the Promotion of Culture use are really similar to all of the EU programs. So they fund audiovisual professionals and people in other cultural industries. And they focus on the Global South and link cultural production with development. There are a few other important international conventions that I talk about that demonstrate a growing concern for culture internationally in recent years. And I don't think I have time to talk about them. But if you're interested, you can ask me questions. So next, I hope to add to the UNESCO side of this. I've looked primarily at the EU programs. But while doing this research, I realized that the International Fund for the Promotion of Culture is really important to understanding this phenomena. I'd also like to talk to audiovisual professionals in the target countries that these programs focus on. I've looked at these things now just from a European perspective, and it would be really good, I think, to see the other side of things. And then also I haven't talked to anyone who runs the specific programs that get funding. I've just talked to the administrators of the programs that award funding. So, thanks.
Why don't we leave the questions until the end?
Yeah, sure.
So, over the summer, I had an internship at the U.S. Embassy in Sophia. Where is it? So that's a picture of the Russian church in Sophia. And I took a picture, it wasn't as good as this, so I had to find this one online, but this church is right in the center of the city, and it's just, the city's great. I don't know if anyone's ever been there, but just to show you that it is a nice city. Don't let the Eastern European part of it scare you away. So specifically, I was the economics intern at the U.S. Embassy in Sophia in the political and economics affairs section. I received the Kabcenell New Europe grant to do this, and the grant supported me living in Sophia for 10 weeks. And specifically what I did was I drafted and edited cables while I was at Post. I worked on healthcare, energy, business sector, banking sector, and the budget. While I was there, there's a lot of upheaval in Bulgaria. I don't know if anyone knows, but the parliament actually stepped down while I was there. There was a huge banking crisis. Oligarchs were fighting constantly. It was just a lot of chaos was going on, so I got the opportunity to write a lot, and it was quite exciting, actually. There's a lot of protests, and it was a good time to be there. On top of the writing, outside of the embassy, I actually went and represented the ambassador at several events. The most fun one was probably the American Beef and Wine Importers Night. That was fun. But you know, part of being the diplomat is going out and meeting people, and that's was a big part of what I did. So I'd be working, writing, and then during the day I'd also have to go out and do meetings and stuff like that, and it was great. And then outside of work, I actually did a lot of traveling. I went to Romania, Greece, and Spain while I was there. And Romania, I'm just going to show you a couple pictures now. These are both from Romania. That's actually Dracula's castle. That was I didn't think I was actually going to do it, but we went, and that's just a picture of Transylvania. I was in Bucharest as well in Romania. And then that's Greece, and that's Barcelona. And, you know, part of the beauty of being there was that I was so close to so many different countries I never really thought I'd see. And so what I did, so I took advantage of that. A lot of people told us rent car, travel, because unfortunately the trains are bad and the planes are expensive. So we drove to Greece, you know, drove to Romania. I flew to Barcelona, thank God. That would have been a bad drive. But, you know, it was just really interesting also just seeing the different types of roads. You know, Romania, I saw probably what's considered one of the best roads in the world. Going to Greece, I had to drive on a dirt road for like 10 miles. So, and it was just crazy. I think that's it. I really didn't have much. I was going to just see questions, but I guess we'll wait for questions till the end. So then, there's that. Great, thanks.
Hi, I'm Mark Kluk. So my presentation, I kind of design it with an undergrad audience in mind, so it's a fairly superficial handling overview of the internship. So feel free to stop me at any time to ask questions. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Jackson, Michigan, which is just a little bit west of here. I went to undergrad at Albanian College, where I majored in biology. And then I came here for medical school and in my 5th and final year of the combined MD and PH program. And I'm currently applying to residency in internal medicine and pediatrics. My professional interests are community health and global health, and so the global health piece kind of is how this whole internship fits into it. So I did my summer internship with the National Health Service in Fife, Scotland. I received the summer research and internship grant to do that. So Fife is a local council area of Scotland, which is basically kind of the equivalent of a state over there. The population of Fife is about 365,000 people, which, for perspective, is about what the population of New Orleans is. So not a whole lot of people, but still a fairly big population when you consider that their health board, their council health board, is about the size of what a state health department would be here. They have 2 major hospitals. And they also have the University of St. Andrews there, which is their main, their major university. So why Fife? So I chose this internship for a number of reasons. First of all, I wanted to do an internship in a nation that had nationalized healthcare. Since we do not here, I thought it would be a good opportunity to learn from a country that has a healthcare system that is nationalized and that does work quite well. It also has a similar population and similar health issues to the U.S., so for that reason I thought translational research and experiences there would be useful to what I'm ultimately going to be doing over here. And also it's just kind of logistically, it's a well-established internship. We have a good relationship with the University of St. Andrews, and we've sent interns there for the last 5 years or so. Also, there's a lot of latitude that I was afforded to kind of individualize the projects that I worked on, which was nice. And also it's English speaking, which is a plus or minus. I speak a little bit of Spanish and French, but not enough that I would want to try to do an internship in a foreign language-speaking country. So I worked on a number of different projects over there, and I'm going to go through just kind of briefly each one. So one of the first one that I'll talk about is a BC vaccination program for high-risk neonates. And so BCG is a vaccine for tuberculosis. It doesn't work terribly well, and it's actually not recommended in a lot of countries such as the U.S. Just because the benefit that you get from it isn't really worth the cost of the intervention. But for certain populations, so high-risk neonates are babies, infants under 1 year old, who were born to parents that are immigrants from a high-risk country where the incidence of tuberculosis is very high. And so the data in that case shows that vaccinating them actually does do much more good than it does harm. And so 1 year ago, they developed a program to dispense these vaccines to this population. And basically my role was to kind of evaluate how good of a job that program was doing. Were we identifying the high-risk neonates? Were we then referring them appropriately to the vaccination clinics, and were they actually, in fact, getting those vaccinations? So you can see the data here. These are the two hospitals that I mentioned, Victoria Hospital and Queen Margaret. And the vaccination program started early in Victoria, which is why the numbers are higher. So the blue bars are the number of infants that we identified that could benefit from the vaccine. And then the orange is those who attended. So the jump from there to there, you can see, is somewhat significant, especially in the Queen Margaret Hospital. And so from that data, we tried to, this is after I left, but we have the names of those people, and we're now attempting to identify what their barriers were that led to them being appropriately identified, but them not being able to make it to the clinic or not being referred properly. And a lot of those have to do with like transportation issues like that, because the care is free there. And then the final columns, the kind of gross green colored columns, are the ones that actually received the vaccinations. And so the jump between the orange and the green is more, it's who showed up, but who was kind of inappropriately referred to the clinic. So maybe they weren't in fact a high-risk candidate. And so they showed up at the clinic and they said, oh, you actually don't need to get the vaccine. And so again, we can look at those numbers then and see why are some people not getting, or why are some people getting inappropriately referred. It's a waste of resources, and the patients don't have to come to the clinics. So those were the kind of the two things we looked at with that project. The next project was something called Kitbag for Schools, and Kitbag is this thing that the children are holding up there, and it's basically a toolbox that's meant to teach kind of emotional self-regulation, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution skills in primary school students. And so the rationale behind this project is that if we're able to teach better emotional regulation and conflict resolution skills early on, this will ultimately translate into better health outcomes later in life, especially as it concerns mental health. And so obviously I was only there for 2 months, so I don't have any data to tell you whether or not that's going to work out, but I think the theory is sound. And my role in this was actually just to kind of conduct a program evaluation to see how the uptake of the Kitbag was going in the 23 schools in Fife Council. And so to do that, I went to each school and interviewed with the head teachers to see if they were using it, how often they were using it, how it was going, if they felt that it was something that they wanted to include in their curriculum, and what we can kind of do to facilitate that. And so yeah, that's about the summary of that. The next project is called the Shine Project. So this is kind of a the objective of this project was to retrain all of the physical therapists, the occupational therapists, and the nursing staff in the NHS facilities in Fife to have a more patient-centered approach. And what I mean by patient-centered approach is, so for a PT or OT, physical therapist or occupational therapist, traditionally what they would say is, oh, your goal is you need to strengthen your quads because you have weak quads and you can't walk very well. You're at a higher fall risk because of that. Well, a patient-centered or person-centered approach would be more interviewing with the patient to see what their functional goals are. So instead of strengthening quads, it'd be like, well, I would really like to be able to do the grocery shopping by myself, or I'd really like to be able to drive or take public transportation on my own to go see my grandkids. And so this was, again, my role, and this was kind of more program evaluator. So I went to all the training sessions, and I interviewed with a lot of the PTs, OTs, and nurses that were trained, and we were trying to identify things that were working, things that weren't working as far as the retraining process went. And what we kind of found was the big obstacle was that they were saying, you know, we don't like people coming in here and telling us how to do our job. Everything we've done has been fine so far. And so kind of trying to bridge that communication gap was what I focused on. And so we retooled the training sessions and did a little bit of some kind of post-intervention surveys, and it seemed like people really liked the new way that we went about the training. Another thing I contributed to the project is they wanted to rename it the Personal Outcomes for Older People Project, and I'll just let you think about what that acronym spells, and I convinced them not to change the name. So other projects, I had two other ones that I will just mention briefly. So firstly, there was an outbreak of E. coli, a rather sizable outbreak of E. coli in Fife, like as soon as I got there, and so I was able to have the opportunity to follow along with that and how they handle it, very similar to how the CDC would handle it here, identifying kind of the patient zero and the first couple patients, trying to track down the source of the infection, which ended up being an Indian restaurant in Dunfermline, and then kind of also tracking down everyone that we thought might be exposed and advising them of what to do if they develop symptoms. So that was cool. And then finally, I developed alcoholism is a problem in Scotland. And so I developed a short community survey that we distributed via social media to kind of ascertain what people thought were, if they thought alcoholism was a problem in their neighborhood, and then if they thought that something needed to be done with it. And then we took that data and correlated it with the density of alcohol vendors in the neighborhood, and we were ultimately trying to look at, is there a higher perceived problem of alcoholism in the neighborhoods that have more shops that sell alcohol. And at the time that I left, we only had an N of about 150 responses to the survey, so nothing really usable at that time, but this is an ongoing survey that hopefully will yield some usable data. And so finally, I kind of just have a bunch of pictures now to, like I mentioned, I thought this would be a lot of undergrads, so to hype them up about possibly doing an internship in Scotland. So this is from a Highland Games in Scotland, which is a little bit different than kind of our track and field event. So this is a guy doing the caber toss where you throw a giant log as far as you can. So that was interesting to watch. And here's an athlete that's taking a quick drink of not water or Gatorade before his race in true Scotland fashion. And speaking of Scotland, so one of the great things about that was I gained an appreciation for good Scotch and whiskey over there. They have a lot of good Scotch and whiskey and good beer. So that was a nice part of Scotland, of the internship after work was done, going out with coworkers. St. Andrews is where I was stationed. It was where all of the interns have stayed for the last 5 years because, like I mentioned, the major university is there. So most of the support services that we would need to complete our internships were in St. Andrews. St. Andrews is a beautiful place. This is the cemetery and the old, ruins of the cathedral from St. Andrews. It's right on the coast of the North Sea. And this is the beach from, if you've seen Chariots of Fire, this is the famous beach of St. Andrews, where I was able to do my morning runs. And of course, St. Andrews is famous for their golf, and this is the old course in St. Andrews. St. Andrews is only about an hour-and-a-half bus ride away from Edinburgh, so I was able to make it down there on weekends. This is from the top of Arthur's Seat, which is one of the mountains surrounding Edinburgh. This is the Botanical Gardens in Edinburgh, Edinburgh Castle, the Royal Museum, which is very nice. And then for anyone who's a Harry Potter fan, this is the Elephant House, which is the cafe where J.K. Rowling is famed to have started writing the Harry Potter books. Highlands and Islands, it was also nice that we had weekends off for this internship, so I was able to do a lot of weekend trips, and we went and kind of rented a car and drove around northern Scotland, and so got to see a lot of cool things there too. So here's puffins on the Isle of May. This is an Instagram photo that my friend took of me on top of some mountain up in the Highlands. This is climbing one of those other mountains in the Highlands. This is what you look like after you slept in a car for 3 days during a weekend trip. And this is the Glenfiddich Viaduct, which is really, really nice. And then just to finish with some panorama shots to get you guys excited about how great Scotland is. Glenfinnan Viaduct, that's what it is. So it was a really great opportunity, and I'm very thankful for the funding that I received through this institution. So to summarize pros and cons of the internship, pros, it was a very individually tailored internship. I was able to kind of pick the projects that I really felt suited me and work on those. And again, with the breadth of experiences, as you've seen, I worked on a bunch of different projects that are quite different in nature. And as a generalist kind of personality, I really appreciated that. Again, it's English speaking, smooth logistics because it was a well-established internship because that relationship is there. Finding housing, getting my access to the university, everything like that was very easy. It's a beautiful place. There are great people. Everyone's extremely friendly and helpful. And I had a lot of time to kind of explore the country on my own. Cons, so cultural similarities are a good or a bad thing. So I kind of wanted it because I wanted to see how nationalized healthcare worked in a similar kind of society. But if you want something very different, it's not the place for you probably. It was very light on the management and policy experiences, so my degree was in management and policy. I did not get as hardcore of an experience in doing kind of more policy writing or operations and financial management things as some of my peers did, but that's okay. That's not what I wanted. But again, if that is what you want, Fife is probably not the internship for you. And then St. Andrews is small. Again, this is something that I liked about it, but if you want a big city, if you don't want to be in a city where there's only one grocery store and no traffic lights, then again, this is not the place for you. So my acknowledgements, my mentors there, my mentor here, the Weiser Center and the School of Public Health Department for Global Health provided my funding for this internship. This is the NHS Fife website if you'd like to check it out. And here's my contact information. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm trying to get to should I try a different way? Okay, cool. Okay, well, I can tell you a little bit about myself before we start. I'm Marisa Xheka. I'm a senior studying history and political science. I'm writing a history honors thesis, and I decided to focus on Albania during World War II. I'm a first-generation immigrant from Albania and can speak the language, and I chose World War II because it's kind of the foundation of the current Albanian state, and also the time when the political leaders of communist Albania came to power. Okay, let's hope that loads. And so my research project is about during World War II, like I said. Albania is a small country in southeastern Europe that both fought off fascist occupation during World War II and also got Allied support to do this. And I chose to focus on these groups of intelligence agents that came from mainly England, the United States, and also parts of Yugoslavia and Soviet Union, who were kind of thrown into Albania at this time and didn't really know the political situation at all, didn't really know anything about the country. And I'm trying to understand how they dealt with this and how they interacted with political leaders during the time. So I'm studying the relationship between these Albanian resistance leaders and these intelligence agents during World War II. And these relationships are really seminal for how Albania develops an East-West political orientation after the war, and how it kind of turns to an isolationist policy. One way to understand Albanian relations is to see breaks it made with different countries. So after World War II, it breaks off. Okay, sorry. Okay, cool, perfect. Yes. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so first I'll just talk a little bit more about my research. So I was trying to understand these relationships. And with the support of the Wisner Center, I was able to travel to both England and Albania to conduct research for my thesis. And being able to visit both of these countries gives me kind of dual perspective of this historical period. So first, in May, I visited London, England, and I conducted research at the British National Archives in Kew. My experience there was amazing. I mean, the whole place is hugely expansive. You can find scholars studying like almost every single country in the globe. They have documents there, and everything was done electronically. Everything from me getting certain documents I wanted to registering there. So it was all a very efficient system in which I didn't really have any problems, and there was also staff there to help me. And the documents I found range from intelligence reports done by the officers I'm studying to interviews with Albanian political leaders at the time, and even things like press reports done by the BBC. So, and these archives allowed researchers to take their own photographs. So I was able to snap pictures on my phone of every document I saw, and I could transfer those directly to my computer and use them now as I'm writing my thesis. And these pictures here are kind of me exploring central London, and also that last picture is of Kew Gardens, which is in the place where the National Archives is, and it's this beautiful garden, National Garden. So then in August, I was able to visit Albania. And my main aim for visiting Albania was kind of the same as in England, to conduct research at the National Archives in Tirana. But compared to the England archives, the Albanian archives are understandably smaller and less comprehensive. But then there's also the problem of gaining access to documents I wanted while I was there. And kind of because of the recent communist legacy in Albania and taking into account the political situation currently, it can be hard to find documents relating to the communist period. So I ended up having a lot of challenges with that, which I eventually was able to overcome. But while I was in this period of trying to figure out what I was going to do about the archives, I kind of had the opportunity to explore the rest of the country, which was really cool. So I got to travel basically everywhere. And I first planned trips to the cities of like major importance to the partisans during World War II. So I was able to visit Durrës, which is the first place that the Italian fascists kind of came to occupy Albania. And there's a huge monument there to the battle, and it's like of a partisan holding a gun, and it's this huge place right in the middle of the city. And as I traveled, I was able to take photographs of all these monuments. The second one there is of a plaque that's at the base of where the partisans were in Korja, which is their headquarters during World War II. And I was also able to kind of gain access to textbooks about history throughout different kind of periods of Albania. And these history textbooks, along with the public monuments I found, will add another facet to my thesis, which will compare the historical remembrance of the partisan period to the consequent communist period in Albania. Sorry, my voice is a little hoarse. I'm a little sick too. But lastly, I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity to travel to England and Albania from the Wisner Center for the grant I received. Walking through the Churchill war rooms or the battlefields of the communist partisans gave me a richer understanding of the people I'm studying about and writing about, and it's an invaluable experience. Thanks. So should I go back to the PowerPoint? Okay.
So Polina's not here, but why don't we if anybody has any questions for our first four speakers, please.
I have a question for Ben. What do you learn, Ben, about your interest is in supranational political entities, the EU, for instance, and then you discover UNESCO. What are your thoughts about the similarities and differences between these transnational institutions and the kind of work they do?
Well, there's a ton. One being that far as how it relates to these global cultural initiatives that I'm looking at, I'm not really sure, which is why I need to look into this one more. One aspect that is really different, though, is that in all these EU programs, there's a lot of focus on co-production, a lot of times between European countries and target countries. So even though, like Viva Riva received €500,000 from this program that was funded by the European Union, it also was a co-production of Plus. So a French company, invested in it and presumably made money off of it, in addition to our continent. And that's not something that you see in the UNESCO program. They're just focused on the target countries.
I have a question for the second speaker. What did you in fact learn about the United States and its position in Turkey and in relation to the region?
Well, I was there also kind of in Bulgaria during like the Ukraine crisis, so I really didn't learn that much about Turkey-U.S. relations. I learned more about what the U.S. was doing about the Ukraine, and unfortunately I can't really talk about it because of non-disclosures and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure, but I mean your perception of the United States in the region.
Oh, I mean, it's interesting because
what it's doing there.
So, I guess the MC I was particularly active and tried to do a lot of things. Tried to really work with the I forget what the organization was called. But it was like American businesses in Bulgaria, and they try to work with them to really try to get rid of rule of law in the country. Rule of law issues are probably the worst thing that's happening to Bulgaria right now, and so they were quite active in that. They were not as concerned because Bulgaria is unfortunately the poorest country in the EU and doesn't really hold that much sway as far as that goes. But they were definitely. It's definitely a medium-sized embassy. It's not like 10 people. It's 100 Americans, 400 Bulgarians. So they do care about that area, and they do try to promote a presence, especially amongst American businesses. Unfortunately, Bulgaria is in a very corrupt state right now, and they were going after American businesses. I visited a thermo coal plant while I was there. That's an American business that was just built, but they couldn't. They were being taxed heavily, and it was the cleanest coal plant in the country, but the dirty coal that was next door, literally next door, the old Soviet former plant, was still heavily used. So we tried and we tried, but there's not much. Yeah, there's the government.
Polina is here.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm late. Okay. Wasn't really sure what to expect. I'm Polina Fradkin. I'm a junior at LSNA, and I spent my summer in Russia, in St. Petersburg, interning at the state Hermitage. If any of you have been there, you should definitely go. Okay, here we go. So, this was not an easy thing to say to my parents, considering that we moved from Russia when I was 1.5 years old in 1996. So first thing I did was I got my internship, then I got the grant, and then I decided to tell my parents so that they really wouldn't have a choice, about which they were not very happy. They pretty much made Russia look like a big crime scene, as did my grandparents and everybody that I had to have mandatory security briefings with, which were pretty much just scaring me out of going to Russia. My father, upon saying goodbye to me, said, "Don't tell anyone you're American. Don't talk about politics. Don't speak English ever. Don't talk to strangers. Just don't talk. Just don't talk to anyone." And my grandfather, when he was giving me his very stern security briefing, told me that the best case scenario would be that they just wouldn't let me into the country because of my Russian-American passport issues, and I'd have to be sent home, so everything would be great. So I went to Russia virtually alone, no friends there, and just some distant family who I hadn't seen probably since I was a year old. All right, a few realizations came along with getting to Russia, which included getting used to the language, even though I'm a native Russian speaker, to the people, and to the 24-hour daytime, because summer means white nights. So coming from a Russian-speaking family, I didn't realize that I didn't have the vocabulary to live in a society where everybody speaks the language. For instance, I didn't know how to book a table. I didn't know how to order a train ticket. I didn't know how to even just talk to people my age because I had been only speaking with my family. So this definitely took some getting used to. It's a whole different vocabulary and calls for a specific comfort in the language that I did not have yet, but now I do. People's attitudes, I realized that Russians are very harsh and blatant and brutally honest, which I was not, even growing up in a Russian-speaking family, going into a country where everybody is like this, was not prepared for that. And then here's some of the white nights. It's pretty much bright enough to perform surgery. That's 11 p.m. And 3 a.m. So what happens is the sun goes below the horizon for a couple of hours a night and then comes back up. So there's not really a nighttime. And it was really confusing and made it impossible to sleep. And I wore a sleeping mask sometimes, but it did not work. After the white nights ended, these are the bridges going up, just a nice picture. It's not always this crowded. This was a specific event of all the high schoolers graduating and coming out and basically getting really drunk in the streets. So, and this is just a really nice picture of the metros. They call them the palaces of the people. You will not find metros like these anywhere else in the world. They are astoundingly beautiful. It shocked me. I mean, anywhere that you go in America, New York, disgusting. Russia, that's something that they really have. All right, now getting to work. This is the view that I had walking to work every day. And every day that I came to where I walked through the arch into the Palace Square, Dvorsovaya Ploshchad, I would see this and I would just be so overcome that I would have to take a picture and send it to my friends every time. I'm like, I can't believe that I work here. So it was amazing. I honestly felt like I was living in a Tolstoy novel. The work that I would do was translating Russian to English in the archaeological department. I taught English to some art restorers in the restoration center, which is kind of in a suburb. And there was, the guest hospitality, picking important artist people and curators and writers up from the airport and bringing them to their hotel or respective event. And then, of course, special events. There were European art biennial openings and galas. The White Nights Gala, actually, that I have a picture of right here, it was a ball. It was the Russian equivalent of the Met Gala, except without the celebrities and more diplomats. I was not allowed to, as a staff member, I was not allowed to talk to anyone or sit or eat. So that was my experience, but it was still incredible. This was the dancing portion. They would come into all the rooms and announce with a little bell that there will be Viennese waltz in the ballroom in 15 minutes. So it was gorgeous. And another event, well, here's a picture of it, was there were operas in the courtyard. So this is the Teatro Regio Torino, as the Italians. They came to the courtyard and put on this huge free, I think it was excerpts from Verdi operas. So I was sitting back in where the press were and kind of had access everywhere and felt really cool. And the amazing thing is about Russia is that, about Russian people and the importance of culture to them, is that you might lose hot water for weeks at a time, but you're still going to go to the ballet and the opera and the museum. So that was just something really unique about the culture there. A great story from while I was working there about just a testament to the Russian attitude. This only happened a couple times, but I had to go stand at the front doors because there were no Russian speakers or comfortable Russian speakers standing at the doors, and you pretty much had to monitor that nobody was going in with a backpack or a large coat or an umbrella or water bottles, and just tell everyone that they had to throw it away or put it in coat check. So I'm standing there, and you have to sort of have eyes everywhere and look through the herd of people who are trying to get into the museum. And I see a man with a gigantic backpack into which would probably fit a baby gorilla trying to get into the museum. And I say to him in Russian, I just am never sure whether to speak English or Russian. And I said, "I'm sorry, but you're going to have to check your backpack. We're not allowed to let in backpacks." And he looked at me, just did not understand. And his wife, who's next to him, who was a Russian, but was speaking English to me, strangely, so I assume she's an expat. He was an American. She looked at me and said, "Well, a few days ago, we went into the museum with the backpack." And I said, I'm sorry, I really can't let you in with a backpack. This is, I was new there. I wasn't going to break any rules. And they would yell at us if we did. So she looked at me with these sort of sparks coming out of her eyes and grabbed her poor bald little husband by the hand and dragged him inside through the doors. And I was just in shock. I crowd parted with all my might, grabbed them by their backs, pulled them out and said, "I'm sorry, I was not here 3 days ago, so you're going to have to check your backpack." And she came an inch from my face and she said to me, "You're just like the Russians. You like Russians." And then she sort of just looked me up and down and left back to the coat check. And everybody, all of the interns standing at the doors could not, no words. It was a fantastic moment. That was great. That was a highlight. So yeah, just amazing things about working there. It's a palace. It is a palace that I had special access to, that I cannot believe that all the things that the special little corridors and winding staircases in the back that I was able to just go into, and having a sense of the museum by being there every day and just being able to wander for hours when we just finished a project or something, or there was little work to do. I think I saw almost the entire collection, which is pretty huge because it's the biggest art collection of paintings in the world. And that's that. Living in Russia, as I said, I came with no friends and arrived and made my friends, found a new place to live with them in the center with a really international group. It was me, a German girl, a Tunisian girl, a French girl, and a Belgian girl, and the boring American. So we lived in this grody little apartment in the center that was super cheap and disgusting, with an awful landlady, the worst one on the entire planet, I think. But it was amazing. It was home to us until a later story that I will tell. But you can see it over there. That's my German and Belgian friends watching a World Cup, which is an exciting event for the summer for the Europeans. And just days at the beach, going to the vintage market. Over there you can see that's a Soviet airplane toy that I fell in love with. The vintage markets are just great in Russia. Just all the things that the operas, the ballets, we found a music festival that we decided to go to, all the palaces around the vicinity of St. Petersburg, Petergov, which is probably the most well-known one. I don't know, midnight bike rides. I got to go to my Russian friend's army swearing-in ceremony. I don't even know how to say it in English. It was really interesting because he warned me and his mom warned me to not speak English at all there, but they checked my Russian passport coming in, so it was just, I felt like I was a spy or something. But yeah, so that was that. My family, this is my grandfather's uncle in his house, which I love. There's pictures everywhere like that, all over the walls. And I learned a really valuable lesson that, I don't know if I think this is something that's particular to Russian culture, but if you're family, if you're related, then you're related. No matter how distant you are, you're a blood relative, you're a relative. These were my grandparents' cousins or aunts and uncles who would constantly be inviting me over, calling me, asking me how I was. It was just really gave me a new sense of family, that no matter how distant you are, they still felt so close to me. And the final thing to talk about, we got bed bugs, which was probably the most testing experience of my life, and something that I think that I personally grew from. This is from the day that we were not allowed to go home because it was being disinfected and had to do all of our laundry. So not home, morning to night, we found this anti-cafe, which is a cafe that you pay by the hour that you sit there and not for the amount of food that you get. So, plugged in a movie into the projector, because they had a movie projector, and you can see that everybody looks pretty unhappy and exhausted. Bed bugs are really something that push your limits. Are you gonna flip out and tense up and hyperventilate? Or are you going to make a plan and move forward and calm everyone down and decide to get all of your laundry together and clean everything and find a new place to live and maybe pull out the emergency bottle of vodka to calm everyone down? So that's your ultimate test. I think that was my ultimate test, and I passed it. And to conclude, my roommates and all my friends, Russia is a complete different animal than any other that I have ever visited. And for the reason of that it looks like an adult on the outside. It looks like a developed country. It looks like it has cities and history, and it's, a grown country. You don't think that it's an undeveloped African country. But honestly, it's just a baby on the inside. It's 23 years old. It doesn't have, it's just starting. But the thing is that the land and the culture just has so much history, and everything that you experience there, including people's attitudes or the bed bugs or anything that you go through, losing hot water for a week, it's fine. It's just take it with a grain of salt. It's the Russian experience. So bottom line, I came knowing nobody to work at this museum, which was the best summer of my life so far. And I left with this new network of friends, new connection to my family, new connection to a gorgeous city that I miss so much. And that's that. Oh, in terms of the grant money, it covered my flight and my living expenses, which was a substantial amount. And I encourage everyone in this room to go to Russia. Flights are really cheap right now, $650 maximum round trip. So, political turbulence, whatever, go to Russia. Any questions?
Did you get a visa?
No, I did not need a visa because I had a passport. But usually you do need a visa, and with that you're not allowed to enter if you get a single entry or multiple entry. So nobody wanted to go to Finland with me. So yeah. Any other questions? Oh, I can say about the American-Russian relations I experienced while I was there, that towards the younger end of the spectrum of Russians, they were pretty, anti-Putin, and it was really, maybe it was just because I was hanging out with people who worked at a museum and were pretty well-educated, but it was really interesting to see. And I did see a sign one time on a restaurant that said, I should have put the picture in here, but it said, no entry for people named Barack Obama. So that's like the one really anti-American experience that I saw. Any other questions? Thank you.